The sun over the ancient world, 3,000 years ago, did not rise on individuals. It rose on families. Across the lands connected to the Bible, from the fertile Nile Valley to the kingdom of Cush in the south, from Egyptian cities to caravan routes stretching toward Canaan, the family was the center of life. For black families living in the biblical world, survival, identity, faith, and community were woven together so tightly that one could not exist without the others. A person was never simply an individual. He was the son of his father, the daughter of her mother, the member of a household, a clan, and a people whose history stretched back through countless generations. The family was not a small unit consisting only of parents and children. It was often a vast network of grandparents, uncles, aunts, cousins, nephews, and grandchildren living together or close to one another. The elder of the household carried authority, but authority came with responsibility. He was expected to protect the family, settle disputes, preserve traditions, and ensure that every member of the household had food and shelter. Family was survival. In the kingdoms of Africa connected to the biblical world, every hand mattered. There was no separation between home and work. The family itself was the workplace. Before sunrise, the day began. Women rose first. In the dim light of dawn, they ground grain between heavy stones. The rhythmic sound of grinding echoed through villages along the Nile and throughout the settlements of Cush. Barley and wheat were transformed into flour for bread. Water was collected from wells or rivers. Fires were prepared. The smell of baking bread soon drifted through the morning air. Men prepared for the day's labor. Some were farmers who worked fields near the riverbanks. Others were shepherds leading goats and sheep across dry grasslands. Some were fishermen who cast nets into the Nile. Others were craftsmen who worked with wood, leather, stone, bronze, or iron. In larger towns, merchants organized goods for trade, preparing caravans that would travel hundreds of miles carrying ivory, gold, incense, spices, and textiles. Children were not separated from adult life. From the moment they could walk, they became part of the family economy. A young boy might help tend animals, carry tools, or accompany his father to the fields. A young girl learned to prepare food, gather water, spin fibers into thread, and care for younger siblings. Childhood was not viewed as a separate stage of life. It was preparation for adulthood. Every task taught responsibility. Every day was a lesson. Education rarely happened in a formal classroom. Instead, knowledge passed from generation to generation. Fathers taught sons. Mothers taught daughters. Grandparents told stories. Around evening fires, children listened to accounts of ancestors, kings, journeys, victories, hardships, and faith. These stories were more than entertainment. They were identity. They explained who the family was and where they belonged in the world. A child who knew the stories of his people understood his place within history. Homes varied depending on location and wealth. In some regions families lived in mud brick houses clustered together in villages. Thick walls protected against heat during the day and cold during the night. Roofs were often flat and used for work or rest. In more rural areas, some families lived in tent-like structures or simple dwellings made from local materials. Furniture was limited. A family might own woven mats, clay jars, baskets, a loom for weaving cloth, and a few wooden stools or tables. Yet despite the simplicity, the home was the center of family life. It was where meals were shared, children were raised, traditions were taught, and faith was practiced. Food reflected the realities of daily life. Bread was the foundation of nearly every meal. Families also ate lentils, beans, onions, dates, figs, olives, and fish. Along the Nile, fishing provided an important source of food. Wealthier households occasionally enjoyed meat from goats, sheep, or cattle, but for many families meat remained a luxury reserved for celebrations and special occasions. Meals were communal. Family members gathered together around shared dishes. Food was not consumed in haste. It was a time for conversation, teaching, and connection. Marriage was one of the most important events in a family's life. It united not only two people but two households. Marriages often involved negotiations between families. Gifts were exchanged. Agreements were made. Weddings could become community celebrations lasting several days. Music filled the air. Families gathered to eat, dance, and honor the new union. For a young woman, marriage often meant joining her husband's household and becoming part of a larger family network. The role of women was demanding and essential. While men often represented the household publicly, women managed much of the daily life that allowed the family to function. They controlled food preparation, cared for children, produced textiles, managed household resources, and preserved family traditions. A skilled and respected mother could hold enormous influence within her household. She taught values, passed on practical knowledge, and helped shape the next generation. In many ways, she was the heart of the family. Fathers carried different responsibilities. They provided security, organized labor, taught sons, represented the family in public matters, and preserved the family's reputation. A respected father was expected to lead by example. His children learned not only from his words but from his actions. They watched how he worked, how he treated others, and how faithfully he fulfilled his responsibilities. Family honor mattered deeply. The behavior of one member reflected upon everyone. The extended family acted as a safety net. If a father died unexpectedly, relatives stepped in to support the widow and children. If drought or hardship struck one household, others often provided assistance. Survival depended on cooperation. No family could thrive alone. The clan was stronger than the individual. This sense of mutual obligation created bonds that lasted generations. Faith shaped nearly every aspect of family life. In communities connected to the biblical world, belief in God was not confined to a special day or location. It was woven into daily existence. Parents taught prayers to their children. Stories of God's actions in history were repeated again and again. Families gathered for religious celebrations. They offered thanks for harvests, prayed for protection, and sought guidance during difficult times. Faith was inherited much like language and culture. It was learned at home long before it was practiced publicly. The passing seasons marked the rhythm of life. Planting, harvest, festivals, and migrations all shaped the calendar. During harvest season, entire families worked together in the fields. Men cut grain. Women gathered and processed it. Children helped carry bundles. The work was exhausting, but it was also a time of community. Songs were sung. Stories were shared. Success meant security for another year. Failure could bring hunger. Trade connected black families of the biblical world to distant lands. Merchants traveled north toward Egypt and Canaan, east toward Arabia, and west across African trade routes. Caravans carried valuable goods through deserts and across river valleys. Some families built their prosperity through trade, linking communities separated by hundreds of miles. These journeys exposed people to different languages, customs, and ideas, creating a world that was far more connected than many imagine today. In the Kingdom of Kush, one of Africa's great ancient civilizations, families lived within a society known for its military strength, trade networks, and cultural achievements. Their kings ruled powerful territories. Their merchants traded with neighboring nations. Their warriors protected caravan routes and borders. Yet despite these grand achievements, daily life still revolved around family. Parents raised children. Meals were shared. Elders taught traditions. The ordinary moments of life remained the foundation of society. Joy and sorrow were both part of family life. Weddings brought celebration. Births brought hope. Harvests brought gratitude. But life was also fragile. Disease, drought, accidents, and conflict were constant threats. Many parents experienced the heartbreak of losing children. Families mourned together. They honored the memory of loved ones. Ancestors remained part of the family's story long after death. Their names were remembered. Their wisdom was repeated. Their legacy lived on through future generations. As evening approached, families gathered once again. Animals were secured. Tools were stored. Fires were lit. The smell of bread and cooked grain filled the air. Children sat beside parents and grandparents. Stories were told. Some recounted family history. Others described great kings, distant lands, or acts of faith. In these moments, identity was passed from one generation to the next. The family was more than a household. It was a living bridge between the past and the future. The values learned within the family shaped entire societies. Respect for elders, responsibility toward relatives, commitment to faith, and loyalty to the community were not abstract ideas. They were lived realities experienced every day. A child learned them by watching parents, listening to grandparents, and participating in the daily work of survival. 3,000 years ago, black families living within the biblical world faced challenges that modern people can scarcely imagine. Yet they also experienced many of the same hopes that families experience today. They wanted safety for their children. They desired food on the table. They celebrated marriages. They mourned losses. They worked hard to build a better future. Across villages, riverbanks, cities, and caravan routes, families remained the foundation of life. They preserved culture. They protected traditions. They taught faith. They carried history forward. The great kingdoms and famous rulers of the ancient world may fill history books, but it was ordinary families who sustained civilization. Generation after generation, they planted crops, raised children, shared meals, passed down stories, and preserved the values that shaped their world. As the sun disappeared beyond the horizon and the stars emerged above Africa's ancient landscapes, families gathered around their fires. Bread was broken. Prayers were spoken. Children listened to the voices of their elders. And the invisible thread that connected past, present, and future remained unbroken. This was how black families lived in biblical times, 3,000 years ago, not as isolated individuals, but as members of households bound together by faith, work, responsibility, love, and the enduring strength of family.